From one host to another, let's welcome our next speaker, the one-of-a-kind Jeff Giddens.
Hello. Great to be here with you. I'm really excited. I've never talked about this subject before, and I wanted to talk about it because I think it's something that we don't talk about very often, but that may be affecting a lot of organizations, including yours, in this room. So over the last 12 years, our company has run more than 7,500 landing page experiments, donation page experiments, advertising experiments, and a lot of times we get great insights from those. But many times the process of going through testing reveals that the landing page or the donation page is not actually the problem. So I want to start today. I want to tell you two stories that I've encountered personally in the last 12 months. You may find your organization in one of these exchanges, rather. So I was on a call, and it was a marketing team. They were presenting some results of a lead gen campaign they had just done. And the marketing director said, hey, we ran these lead ads. We showed a content offer in Facebook, and it was a Facebook lead ad. They used the kind of built-in mechanism there. And so people click the ad, and this little dialogue pops up with an acquisition form. It's pre-filled with your information, which makes it super easy. You accept the terms and conditions. No one ever reads them, but everyone clicks that button. And then you get confirmation, and then the lead from Facebook is placed right into your email database, and you can fulfill the offer that you sent them. And he said this was a breakout campaign for us. They had spent quite a bunch of money on it. They generated about 100,000 leads. And people kind of gave them approval. And then a gal from the development team spoke up. And she's like, what's really funny about all this is we're doing something really similar to this in development. We're doing it a little different structurally. What we're doing is we have this ad. It's not a lead ad. It's just an ad to drive traffic to an acquisition page that we set up. And then right after that, there's this donation ask. It's like we ask right away for money because their goals are more financial in motivation. And someone else on the call asked, well, what's the conversion rate? And she's like, it's 4.4%. And so they did some quick math, and maybe she shouldn't have said this. I don't know. But she said, hey, just quick math. You guys might have had 4,400 extra donors if you had just put that donation ask at the end. And it wasn't like delivered with malice. It was very innocent. 4,400 extra donors to this organization represents about a 50% increase in their overall donor file. They have about 10,000 donors. And the marketing director, as she's saying this, he has his head down. It's like a Zoom, box. He has his head down, and it's already shaking as she's talking. And he actually hit his fist on the table, and he said some words that you may have heard in your organization. That wasn't our goal. Donors, right? Not our goal. Let me tell you another organization story. I was sitting with a group, this is a couple years ago, and the marketing team was with an agency, and they were showing a spot that they had just done that had all of these like really incredible videos, testimonials from kids and adults who had been helped by this organization. It was a hospital in Toronto, and they had a specialization in heart surgeries, and they did lots of heart transplants. And so they did this, it was amazing. You guys have seen some of these videos before where I guess as Tim would say, your oxytocin gets released and the hair on the back of your neck stands up, and there's like not a dry eye in the house, and they finish and everyone claps, and there's like sniffling happening. And they're like, any questions? Maybe they shouldn't have asked that either. But of course, someone pipes up from the back and says, oh yeah, what was the ROI on that campaign? And like instantly just dethrones any sense of like accomplishment from the team that did it, right? But both of these stories are just kind of symptoms of an issue that I think we have within organizations. And it's really evidence of a struggle or an ongoing battle between marketing and fundraising. And I've been trying to decode over the last couple years why this continues to happen, because my biggest question is, why can't we be friends? As the great 70s song by War once sang. So I want to talk through this problem. I hear some murmuring and I see some nodding of heads. Some people may be experiencing this sort of thing. I have a few hypotheses about why this may be happening. And so the rest of my talk, we're just going to kind of try to understand the source of the problem so that hopefully we can find some solutions. The first hypothesis starts with something that I've seen over the years of working with nonprofit organizations is sometimes they tend not to think like businesses, and even may say we are not, in fact, a business. And so I was like, what is a business? I've never actually looked at the definition of that. I went to Merriam-Webster, and the Merriam-Webster definition for a business says this. It says it is an organization or enterprising entity engaged in commercial, industrial, or professional activities. I think it's easy to look at this definition and actually exclude nonprofits from it. I think you could look at this and say, well, we are an organization or an entity, like some sort of 501c3 structure. We're not really in commercial activities, certainly not industrial, maybe professional, you might say that. But I don't think we really fit this definition of a business. And I think that mindset can take over nonprofits until you read further into the definition, same definition, and ask the question, what is the purpose of a business? And Merriam-Webster answers that like this. It says to organize some sort of economic production of goods or services. And this starts to kind of like blur the lines a little bit, right? Maybe not economic production. You're not trying to produce a profit or trying to produce a return to shareholders. Maybe we're not trying to produce goods. We're trying to produce good, maybe, but not plural, goods. We're not trying to sell stuff. Services, sure. Some of us have services in the name of our nonprofit, right? There's a whole sector, health and human services. We try to provide services to a community or to a people group or to children, something like that. So this kind of part of the definition opens it up a little bit, maybe. And maybe we are businesses at the core. But the last part of Merriam-Webster's definition really makes it plain and clear. It says businesses can be for-profit entities or nonprofit organizations fulfilling a charitable mission or furthering a social cause. And I think this is just a struggle for a couple of reasons. But as I was breaking this down and trying to figure this out, I just started comparing things that businesses have and that nonprofits have. And businesses, nonprofits, two columns, right? So businesses have a budget. You guys have a budget? Yeah. No budget. Wow, that's awesome. Must be nice. Yeah, nonprofits generally have a budget, right? How about revenue? Nonprofits have revenue? Maybe you wish you had more. I think we all do, but that's why you're here. Nonprofits generally have revenue. Mission? Yeah, nonprofits have a mission. I was actually at a taco joint in Dallas a couple weeks ago, and I was throwing my trash away, and up on the wall, they had the mission. It says, our mission is to serve tacos. I was like, see, they have one too. It's very plain. Doesn't have to be more complex than that. What about employees? Nonprofits have employees, right? Yes. Businesses, they have customers. Nonprofits, do you have customers? I think this is where it starts to get a little confusing because customer is a funny word, and I don't know if we always think about who is our customer. Peter Drucker, who's one of the foremost business gurus in the last 100 years of American business leadership, he said this. He said there's only one valid purpose of marketing, and that is to create a customer. And so I think one of the reasons that we have, one of the hypotheses I have, the reasons that we have this tension between marketing and fundraising within our organizations is because nonprofits have difficulty defining their customer. Who is your customer? Who do we serve, right? I think that word, that question about who do we serve actually makes it a little cloudy for us. It's really easy in the for-profit space to understand who a customer is, right? If you're at the car lot, who's the customer? It's the person driving away. I don't know how this guy's driving, like with holding the keys out the window. I don't know, maybe it's like one of those push button things. But you know who the customer is, right? There's a very clear relationship between the person offering the service or the good and the person who walks away from it. This is many of y'all's experience this morning, right? You go and you order coffee and you transact, right? And there's a very clear person who is the transactor who taps their phone or whatever to pay for their coffee, and then they receive the coffee in return. And in the for-profit space, most of the time, the person who is paying for the transaction is also the recipient of the good or service, right? And this happens sometimes in nonprofits. You can see it where you have like donor and recipient alignment. Like the person who receives the value from your of your nonprofit is also the person who supports it. Like an example is like a membership-based organization, maybe like a trade union. Like a person pays their dues or they pay their membership and they receive certain benefits. Maybe an alumni association, right? Alumni associations often have this sort of overlap where the student who has received the benefit of the education also becomes the donor. And in those situations, it's just not very likely that you're going to attract, maybe it happens in edge cases, but it's not very likely that you're going to attract donation support from someone who has not personally received the benefit. This is just one way that these things happen. But you know, nonprofits have some structures that are more unique that don't commonly occur in the for-profit space. Here's one. So like donor-recipient overlap. So maybe nonprofits who receive donations from some people, and then maybe some people receive the benefit of that, but maybe there's a larger audience beyond them, right? You could argue that alumni association is like this, like, hey, you give because your child went to a university and you saw it change their life, and the child is the one that actually receives the benefit. Maybe this is like a policy group where some people are giving because they believe that you will lower or raise taxes, and they will receive the benefit from that, but also there's a wider group of people who receive the benefit who aren't giving. Does that make sense? So you have like the fully aligned section, then you have like where it starts to kind of separate. And then I think the majority of nonprofits are actually in a very different structure, where you have this group of donors who funds the organization's activities, and then you have this group of recipients. And a great example of this is like child sponsorship organizations. You're actually sending money overseas to someone who is going to receive a benefit. Maybe they receive education or food or medicine. Maybe like a rescue mission or a food bank. Now, is there a case where one of the people who was helped one day by a rescue mission comes back and becomes a donor? Sure, but that's not the usual course of events, right? So most nonprofits are in this weird situation where you have the donor and you have the recipient, and they're separate. Sometimes they're even separate species, like a cat rescue. I don't know if a cat has ever come back to actually give back to the organization that put food on their plate, but I'd like to see it one time. But yeah, this is like the common thing that we find ourselves in, and so I think that really begs the question, like, of these two, who is our customer? If the primary goal of marketing, according to Mr. Drucker, is to create a customer, then who is our customer? And you know, nonprofits look at this, and sometimes they even have like more groups that pop up, like, oh, we also need volunteers, right? They're kind of our customers too, because our organization couldn't run without these people who give their time. And so people give money, but people also give time too, right? Isn't that important? It is. So shouldn't we like market to them too? Yeah. But you could look at these three things and say, which of these are a customer? I don't know. And I think that the question is all of them, or the answer is all of them are your customer. But I think that this sort of decision is actually compounded by one other thing that doesn't get said out loud a lot, which is that not everyone feels comfortable asking for money. And within nonprofits, people who love the cause and don't feel comfortable asking for money usually work somewhere outside of fundraising, right? And that's okay. You don't have to feel comfortable asking for money. It's not normal. Trust me, it's weird. That's why we're all kind of weirdos here together, because we decided to wake up every morning and ask people to give their money away for causes that help other people. It doesn't make rational sense. No one wakes up wanting to give their money away, and so certainly not everyone feels comfortable asking for money. I was driving with my kids one day, and my son said, "Dad, what does NextAfter do?" And I said, "We're in the fundraising business." And he said, "What's fundraising?" And I said, "It's when we ask people to give their money away." He said, "Why would anyone do that?" And I was like, "Welcome to my life, son." But this, I won't call it a fact, this tendency within organizations is you have people who care about the same cause. Some feel comfortable asking for money and some don't. And I think that's just, I think it's natural. I think we have to lean into it. But I think we need to actually say that out loud, because here's the deal. Marketing and fundraising are often divided by this, but they don't have to be. And this causes all sorts of like turf wars and conflict within organizations. So fundraisers might say, marketers, you only care about the top of this funnel, right? And they can get like really cynical about it. And honestly, like it can become toxic within organizations to where you're like, oh, you're just chasing vanity metrics, like these likes. You do these really visually arresting ads that we can't measure any benefit from, right? Because we're jaded fundraisers and we just care about names, donors, dollars. You do these like informational, Facebook posts or whatever that gives people information, but there's no call to action, right? But the truth is, like, marketing is important to fundraising. They need each other because the first step of getting someone to give a gift is getting someone to care in the first place, right? And so fundraisers point the finger and like, you only care about the top of the funnel and you don't care about what's happening at the bottom. And marketers might say, hey, fundraisers, you only actually care about the bottom of the funnel. Like everything you do is an ask. You can find anywhere else like cram an ask into this. Hey, here's a straight direct ask. Only a few hours left to give. Urgency, we need your help. It's like feels like desperation to someone who doesn't feel comfortable asking for money. Sometimes they're like, you guys just use a bunch of like manipulative devices, like a 7x match. You know how I know it's manipulative? Because it didn't work in the first email, so you cranked it up to 17x in the second email. Really? We're just like monkeying with numbers, like it's just inventing things. And, when marketers only care about the top of the funnel, at least from fundraisers' view, and from the marketer's view, the fundraiser only cares about the bottom of the funnel, then guess who loses? Everyone. Because their conversion metrics aren't good and never have been. 1% to 4% of people are going to convert to give a donation. This is what we see, right? And the challenge is this: we're already fighting against rationality. It doesn't make sense, as I said earlier, to give your money away. But when we look at this upside down, as we tend to do, we see like we're failing most of the time. That doesn't make anyone feel good, feel accomplished. It certainly doesn't. It maybe what's holding our organizations back from growing as fast as they should. Flint McLaughlin is a very impactful person in my life. Tim and I met him, and as you've heard us talk over the years, you've seen this exact set of slides where he gave us this new perspective on the funnel. Because Tim referenced this yesterday in his talk, but he said, hey, the funnel is a very useful analogy, right? It's useful. All marketing should influence a decision. But the problem is that our perspective on the funnel fools us because people aren't falling into it, they're falling out of it. We're in this attention economy, and people are constantly just choosing other things because they don't want to give their money away. And the other fact about the funnel is that no one travels down this one central path. People give to your organization for a multitude of reasons. I've presented this so many times, and as I was reading this in prep for this talk, I think that he actually hid something in here. It's at the very end of the first fact. He said, all marketing should influence a decision. And we looked at this funnel long enough and have created this analogy called the donor mountain, where you have people who are prospects. They've shown some interest in your organization. They hopefully will become donors. You can define these as a donor, like someone who's actually financially transacted with your organization. And a lead prospect is someone who you can contact at will, so you have their phone or their email address or their home address, but they've not yet given, right? And I just wonder, as I was looking at this, if we've really sold this short. I think maybe if I can take fault here, like this analogy of the donor mountain might have actually perpetuated the problem which we're talking about. Because ultimately, yes, donors are the lifeblood of organizations, no money, no mission, all of those things. Prospects, you're going to need to constantly be attracting people who are not yet ready to give or persuaded to give or don't see the value proposition to give, not motivated yet. But to do that, you actually need traffic, right? And we work a lot in the digital world, and traffic is just one way to measure it, traffic to a website. Any retailer or for-profit would look at this too and say, hey, if you're in the grocery business and you have shoppers and you have buyers, you're going to need people to actually enter the store first, right? You're going to need traffic. So you need traffic. To generate prospects, you've got to generate a lot of traffic. And website visits are just one way to quantify this, but you've got to be engaging with people, right? And to get traffic, which I'm defining as like a click, like someone who actually lands on your website, you've actually got to show impressions or ads to a lot of people. Maybe these are like referral links. Maybe these are, they could be anything like a sign with a QR code in it that people click and go to your site. But you got to show impressions to a lot of people. So you got to reach them. And I want to offer this as, maybe you can offer this as a gift to the marketing team if you find yourself in conflict. As I look at this more and more, it's actually not the donor mountain. It's mostly marketing, right? It's mostly marketing. 3/4 of this mountain is marketing to reach that summit of a donor. And we know no one climbs a mountain just to go halfway up, right? And the truth is, not everyone is going to make it to the summit. Not everyone's going to make it. That's why the air is thinner up there. That's why it's harder. It gets more tiring. That's why this mountain analogy, we've leaned into it so much. But the truth is, most of what's happening here is marketing. But if we don't agree on what the summit is, then we may have some of the challenges that we've seen in our organizations. In fact, it leads to like some interesting situations when you're not in this sort of alignment throughout the whole process. The first one I want to call top of funnel paradise. Why is it paradise? Because you can be free from the obligations of any reporting metrics, right? If your campaign didn't work, hey, it was just top of funnel. Just top of funnel advertising. It's cool. It was a brand campaign, right? It's paradise, right? And many organizations set up marketing like this, right? Where marketing is only responsible for impressions. And the fundraising team is like, hey, we need prospects for donors. And it's like, well, you better figure out a way to get them because we're just out here generating impressions, awareness, right? We're just out here to make people more aware. You guys do the dirty work of getting contact information for the people. We just want to do impressions. And they use some things to justify this. And Brady Josephson's going to counterpoint me later this afternoon on this. I look forward to it. But they'll say, hey, like for-profit brands do this, right? Like Coke has been doing this for years. They've been showing these memorable ads that like generations of people memorize. And wouldn't it be powerful if our nonprofit had that sort of brand awareness? And it's true. It'd be awesome if some of the nonprofits were as effective at marketing as for-profit companies have been. But the truth is, Coke shows these ads because they have a problem that you don't have. One day, you're going to get thirsty, and you're going to go to 7-Eleven, and you're going to stand in front of this. And Coke has spent billions of dollars pumping awareness into your brain because they hope that you will choose, what is it, like spiced Coke Zero now or something, over Squirt or, God forbid, a Pepsi product. I think we're in a Pepsi building. I should shut up. But they do this because they know that you're going to have this decision and they're not going to be there to guide you through that process, right? That's where awareness really, really counts. And it makes sense. Like Coke, there's like 4 chains in the service line to get a Coke to you. They sell the formula to their bottlers who bottle it, who then sell it to the distributors, who then sell it to 7-Eleven, who then sell it to the customer. They're so far from their customers. Nonprofits aren't. No one goes to the nonprofit store to pick one out. That's not how it works. No one wakes up saying, who's it going to be today? Like most of our transactions, like it or not, are direct response. In this privacy era, that's actually like a big advantage. Nonprofits are sitting on mountains of first-party data. We know who our people are, and we can reach out to them, and we should think about that as a strategic advantage. That doesn't mean that we should not be running awareness ads, but we should not be doing what for-profits do to try to solve problems that they have that we don't. Make sense? So when we set up marketing just designed to go get impressions, and it's divorced from the entire rest of the mountain, we may be setting ourselves up to fail. Here's another situation for you. How about this? Clicks to nowhere, right? Hey, we're going to do a content strategy. Hey, can we put like sign-up offers on that page? No. They're not ready for that. That's not what this is for, right? We just want to get people to the website. Cool. Can we maybe like put a little email subscribe button at the bottom of your article? I don't think so. Listen, that's not our goal. And guess what? Marketing owns the website. You ever heard that one before? So we're going to go get impressions, and we're actually going to take it one step further and get a lot of traffic, but it's not yours. These people actually don't want to give. We heard that from them. They're not ready. So sometimes you set yourselves up like this, and you see how this mountain is starting to get disconnected? Well, I think maybe the worst would be situation 3, which I call lead gen prison, right? Where it's like, we're going to go get all of these leads, but they're not for fundraising. Like, trust me, these people do not want to give. In fact, they're never going to give. So we'll just go get all these leads, and we'll do something with them. We're still deciding on that. We have a 4-hour Zoom meeting next Tuesday to figure out what we're going to do with the leads. We'll actually decide after we get them, right? And the fundraising team's like, where are our donors going to come from? And they look across and they're like, sure would be nice, right? If you would share that with us. And so you look at this, and yes, it makes a lot of sense, but our organizations are typically not set up like this, right? So the question is, how do we get alignment? So I want to give you 3 steps that I've seen happen. Those are hypotheses. These are things that I've seen nonprofits do who go into hyper-growth mode to be able to align these things within your organization. Because ultimately, we've seen a lot of ads and landing pages and things like that, but those aren't often the problems. Most problems are people problems at heart. And I think that one of the challenges is our flesh, our humanity gets in the way sometimes of realizing that we're on the same mission. We just want different things. So if we could snap into alignment like this, we might be actually able to grow. So the first step you might want to try to end this battle is to clearly define your customer. Who is your customer? Have that conversation. I've, intimated maybe by this mountain that the customer is the donor, but ultimately, any one of these three customers could be your customer depending on the campaign. You may say, hey, we need to run a volunteer campaign, and we go get them, right? But what usually happens is when people who don't want to raise money are trying to decide who the customer is, they're only going to choose two of these three, and you know which one they're going to choose, right? Because they don't feel comfortable asking for money. That's okay. But sometimes we have to align those things. So clearly define who is your customer. Who is the person we're trying to reach in this campaign? Sometimes we may need to actually go generate impact for organizations by reaching more people who we can help, right? So sometimes the customer is the recipient. But a lot of times, in for-profit organizations, sales and marketing are kind of joined up because they know their customer is eventually someone who's going to transact with them. And I think we as fundraisers have the opportunity to just say, hey, that's not a bad thing, right? Doing marketing to generate a donor is not a bad thing. It's actually a great thing because it helps grow these other audiences. So step one, clearly define who is your customer. Wrestle through that question. It's not going to be an easy one to answer. Number two, define where you draw the line. This could be tricky because this may seem like I'm trying to divide marketing and fundraising again when I've just said they should actually be joined. But at some point, you're going to have to say, who's responsible for this level of our marketing mountain, right? Responsibility leads to accountability. And so you have to decide where you draw the line. So is marketing going to handle everything up to the lead, and then donors or the fundraising team can look at those leads and try to convert them to donors? Or is marketing going to be kind of in the middle where they're going to send a lot of traffic, and then the fundraising team uses various offers or lead gen tools or strategies to turn that traffic into prospects? Or is marketing just going to go do impressions and do awareness? And it's fundraising's job to turn those awareness ads into traffic, into an actual visit or engagement with somebody. There's no wrong answer. It could be a lot of different ways here, but you have to define where you're going to draw the line and where your organization typically does. You may already know the answer to this and not have to define it. It's just saying out loud, maybe. But you have to define where you're going to draw that line so you can have accountability and responsibility. And the last thing I would encourage you to do that I've seen work incredibly well is just to chain your KPIs together, right? Lead gen prison, don't keep your donors in bondage. Chain your KPIs together, right? Because all of these actually have a question that you can ask to understand if you're being successful. Number one, how much traffic are our impressions generating? Are we getting clicks to the website from these? Are we tracking these things? Do we know the effectiveness of our awareness outreach efforts? Sometimes we do this awareness, and you've seen really successful campaigns because of how they make you feel. But the question is, did it actually make you feel something? Were you motivated to take action? Was it enough, right? So how much traffic are our impressions generating? You can actually, that's a fraction, right? Number of website visits over the number of impressions generated. You could also ask a next question. How many of those visitors became prospects? How did we reach them? How did we earn the right, Seth Godin calls it permission marketing, to have future communication with them? So look back over 12 months and say, how many website visitors did we have and how many emails did we add to our file? That's just one way to look at it. What is that conversion rate? And last, of those prospects that we generated, how many of them became donors? As you look through this, you may see some startlingly low metrics. You may see some great success rates. But if you ask these three questions and go get those numbers, then you actually have a starting point for how you might work together. And you realize that these KPIs are all chained together. And again, you could replace donors at the top of this mountain with volunteers or recipients, but you have to clearly define who is the customer here. So when you have this sort of alignment and all these metrics, the number one thing nonprofits love more than anything in the world is a good benchmark. Like, what's the best benchmark? I've come to believe the best benchmark is yourself, your own organization. Go calculate these metrics, put your efforts into play, and then wait 12 months and recalculate them, right? It doesn't really matter what your favorite nonprofit is doing, what the one you think is like the sexiest is doing, or what the biggest one is doing. It matters, are you able to improve these, right? Because you benchmark against yourself, you can see the effectiveness of your own growth. So, if we want to end this battle between marketing and fundraising, 3 quick steps. Number 1, clearly define who is your customer, one of the hardest questions to answer for a nonprofit. Do we even have customers? Yes, we have people who transact with us. They are not often the recipients of the value, but they do transact with us in a financial way. 2, define where you're going to draw the line between marketing and fundraising so you can have clear responsibility and guidelines. And that line, by the way, is the place that's probably hardest to cross. This is where you have to actually work together. So where you draw the line, you may want to adjust that based on who you have in your team, based on your organization's strengths and weaknesses, because that's going to be the most difficult part, is crossing that line. And then the last thing is chaining your KPIs together. And these are not hypotheses. My hypotheses at the beginning were trying to understand why the problem exists. These are things that I've actually seen organizations who go into hyper-growth mode do. And so just 3 ideas for you. I hope this has been helpful. I hope you're enjoying this conference. I hope if you're able to implement some of these, then maybe, just maybe, friendship is within reach for your organization. Thank you all. Enjoy lunch. See ya.